Welcome to the second video of section 2 on preparing our development environment. In this video, we're going to set up BrowserSync to serve our application and integrate automated SASS compilation to make styling our application a lot easier. Let's start by serving our application using BrowserSync. BrowserSync has two purposes. First of all, it's going to serve our application so that we can view it in the browser. And the second is that it adds live reload integration to that server. This way we can automatically reload our application if we make any HTML or JavaScript changes, or even refresh the CSS without even reloading the page at all. After adding BrowserSync, we'll integrate SASS compilation to have a maintainable and well-architectured CSS codebase. We'll compile our SASS down to regular CSS using gulp, and then let BrowserSync know it has to reload the CSS in the browser. Let's start by adding the BrowserSync node module to our dependencies. Just like we did last time, we're going to use npm to install it, save it to your dependencies. Now that we've added BrowserSync to our node modules, we're going to add a task for it in our gulp file. We'll just open up our gulp file and then create a new task. Let's call it serve. In this task, we're going to start our BrowserSync server and then pass in the root of the directory that we're going to serve. In this case, that's the source directory we created in section 1. Alright, let's take it for a spin. In the terminal, run the gulp task we just added by typing gulp serve. You'll notice that BrowserSync also makes our life a lot easier since it's going to open the URL in your default browser, which in my case is Chrome. The next thing we'll do is add SASS compilation. Naturally, like always, we'll first have to install the node module, which is gulp SASS in this case, so use npm to save it to your dependencies. Just like we did with BrowserSync, we're going to add a gulp task to our gulp file so that we can compile the SASS. Let's call the task SASS for now. We're going to use the styles in our source directory as input files, pipe them into the SASS plugin, and then finally save them to the same styles folder. This is going to generate a single compiled CSS file in the styles folder. We'll just add some basic SASS to our project and compile it to verify that it's going to work as intended. The first thing we'll do is create an app.scss file in the source styles directory. We'll use the variable feature in SASS to make sure that it works. We're going to declare a variable for our background color. Let's call it background color. We're going to apply this color to the background color property of the body element. Next, we're going to run the gulp SASS task to compile our vanilla CSS file. As you can see here, the CSS compiled successfully. Now all we need to do is add the CSS reference to our HTML. Let's switch over to our browser to verify, and there we go. The background color has changed just like we wanted. Now, all this build stuff is pretty cool, but having to manually run our tasks every time our files change is going to get pretty boring after a while. This is where gulp's watcher comes in. We're going to add 3 watchers, one for our HTML, one for the JavaScript, and one for the SASS files. The first thing we're going to do is add a separate task that just triggers the BrowserSync reload and does nothing else. This way we can reload our application when we change any of the HTML or JS files. We're going to hook up our source files to a gulp watcher and then pass in the reload task as a dependency which will be run when any of the files change. When an HTML or a JS file changes, we're just going to reload our application. And when a SASS file changes, we're going to run the SASS task instead. Finally, we'll add another watcher, this time for our SASS task. We'll also pass in the reload in the SASS task we created earlier, so we can reload our CSS in the browser automatically. That's also why we're using the stream property here to reload. We'll also pass the watch dependency to the serve task so that when we start our server, it's going to watch for changes automatically. We'll just check if everything works as intended, make sure your server is running first and foremost, and restart the task if needed. Then let's change some HTML and some SASS and see if things live reload like they should. Alright, looks like that works just fine. And finally, we're going to add the serve task to our default gulp task so that we just have to type gulp instead of gulp serve, which is going to make our lives a little easier. In this video lesson, we've set up our development environment so that we can get started working on the actual code. In the next section, we're going to start building our supporting services. Those are going to serve as the foundation for our application.